Parshas Kiseitze, Sheni Perko, Posuk Beis. Chiyish v'ish chet mishpat moves. If a person had a sin which he deserves to be put to death, v'humos, and he was put to death, v'saliso salaitz, his remains should be displayed on the tree. And after he's killed, they display his remains. So over here, Rashi cites the Gemara in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. The Gemara tells us, Kolan is skolim nitolim. Anybody who's put to death through stoning, after he's stoned, his remains are displayed until sundown. So what do? They put it up right before sundown, and they take it down immediately. A tree doesn't mean a tree; it means anything which is even a post that's inserted in the ground. That's called the equivalent of a tree. Rashi, Chiyeh b'ish chet mishpat moves. Smichas Parshas Magid. That the Torah juxtaposes this to Ben Sora Mora. What is the Torah telling us? Shim Chosid, Ovi, Imo Olov. That the parents they take pity on their son, and they feel and they dismiss it as immaturity, whatever they want, and they delude themselves. Although the Torah is foretelling what's coming down, what's ultimately going to happen, that he's going to become a murderer to support his habit. Sof Sheitz and Kavasra, ultimately he's going to take a bad path. V'ava Averos is Chayv Misas Bezin. He will be liable to be put to death by the court. Taliso Salaitz. Rabbi Seinu Amru, Kolan is Kolim, he told him, whoever is subject to the death penalty through stoning, his remains are displayed. Shenemar, Nikilas Elkim Tolui, V'amavorach Hashem, B'san B'skilo, person, God forbid, if he blasphemes Hashem, the punishment is skilo. So you display his remains. However, lo solid nivloso aloetz, you should not allow his remains, his carcass, to remain on the tree. I mean, it has to be taken down before sundown. Kikovo sikureno biyomahu. It has to be buried on that day. Kikil sakem tolui. Because the disgrace of Hashem is being suspended. A Jew has an obligation to be buried in the ground. It's a mitzvah, it's a positive commandment. This in-ground interment is based on this pasuk. And he has to be buried on that day. If one delays a funeral where it's not based on kovod ames to honor the deceased, one is in violation of this. Meaning, if a person dies and there can be, by the time you inform people, there'll be very few people at the funeral, so the person is not going to have his due respect, you're permitted to delay the funeral. But just for any other reason other than kovod ames, you delay the funeral, you're in violation of this halacha. You have to bury him on that day. Should not contaminate the ground. And if you don't follow these protocols, you're contaminating the land. Okay, let's see Rashi. What is the word kilos? Zilzulu shel melechu. It's the disgrace of the king. The king is being disgraced. Why is the king being disgraced? If you don't take down his remains, you just leave it displayed beyond the point. The human being, it was created in the image of Hashem. The Yisrael Bonov, and Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are his children. Moshe, what is it analogous to? This is a midrash. The Shnei Achim Tumim. They have two identical twins. One of the twins became the king. The other became a bandit, and he was hanged because for his behavior. So if they see the bandit hanging, and he was an exact twin of the king. Omer Melech Tolui. So what do they say? They say the king is hanging. Tziva Melech Horidu. So the king says, I'm being disgraced because it looks like I'm being hanged. Kol klola shemikroloshin hokel v'zilsut. Whenever it says klola, means something which is desecrated. It's cheapened. And the word kal, who killa klola nimretzes by David. Now this Orach Chaim over here is very important. Orach Chaim, and the Chovos HaLevavos speaks about this. The Chovos HaLevavos says that people who go and they turn a blind eye with Jews can be brought back to Judaism, and they feel that their studying Torah is more important, and they don't give it any time. He says they're making a big mistake, because if you bring the Jew back to Judaism and all the mitzvahs that he does in the future are only because that person brought him back, everything accrues to the person who brought him back. And they're underestimating the value of influencing another Jew to bring him back to Judaism. It's not Chovos HaLevavos. So over here, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh is something similar. Chia b'ishchet, samach parshazu l'faneo. This portion is juxtaposed to the Betzorim Oreh. Fisha Hashem is misalsa seder tikun odom. Hashem is setting up the sequential life of a person. Betchila iru al atzmo. Shepirashli b'remez parshas seitzei, meaning the person has to understand when he comes into this existence, it's the ultimate battle of his existence, because he has to contend with the evil inclination 24/7, every moment of his life. Arkein here al ov ben. We speak about the father versus the son. Kosher maznu beposed kiyev ben sor more v'kan heir al chachmei ador. This pasuk is speaking about the Torah leaders of the generation. Lifkoach ayin al osei ovel, to keep a supervisionary eye on the people who do ovel, the evildoers of the generation. V'omro chiyeh beish chet mishpat moves. A person, his misbehavior is to the degree it even carries the death penalty. And he continues in his defiant way. And he did not do tshuva, and he died due to a sin. And he will die. He died because of sin. And who is the sin of this person who died because of sin? Who's it attributed to? To the Chacham, to the Torah sage. You should attribute it to the tree. The reason why this person died is because you're attributing it to the tree. What's the tree? The tree is Eitz Chaim Hilav Achzikabo. It's a representation of Torah. The Chacham is the tree that produces the fruit. The Chacham who could have brought him back and could have been the role model, could have influenced that person, and did not, he carries the level of liability. Because Hashem had commanded the Chacham to inform him and to rebuke him, even to the point where the person is ready to actually to react to it. And because he turned a blind eye on this person and he allowed him to continue to sin, and as a result of that, he was taken from this world. That's the reason why that Chacham, although he himself is what he is, he's held accountable. That's what this pasuk is alluding to. A person who dies, why does he die? Because of his sin. And who do we attribute the sin to? To the Eitz. The Eitz is the Chacham. We find that the Kohen Gadol, if a person kills inadvertently, we read in last week's reading, the murderer has to flee to a city of refuge, and he stays there until the high priest passes away. So the Gemara explained why, because the Kohen Gadol failed on his watch because he should have prayed, and he had the ability to bring about midas harachmim, that this tragedy should not take place. Meaning this accidental death could have been avoided. But because the people were not worthy, that's why it happened. The Gemara tells the story of Makos. I always mention Makos because that's Ernie's favorite Masechta. The Gemara tells the story that there was a Tana that within a 12-mile radius, a person was devoured by a lion, was killed by a lion. And Leonov used to come and study with this Tana every single day. He did not come for about a week. Didn't show. Elio did not come. So finally, Elio comes back after being away, being absent for a week. Said, Tana asked him, he says, where were you? He says, because within your domain, a person was killed by a lion, and your merit should have protected him and did not protect him. Therefore, you're held accountable for that person's death. Therefore, I had to be away from you. You are worthy of our relationship. So therefore, I was absent for a week. So similarly, the Gemara says there, the Kohen Gadol, the reason why the person who's incarcerated in the Ir Miklot is there for until the Kohen Gadol passes away, because the Kohen Gadol is responsible for this accidental death. Because if he would have activated sufficient rachmim, it wouldn't have happened. The reason why these people are going astray is because people who should take the bull by its horns and make a difference, and they could make a difference, they're held accountable. So that sin, to a degree, is attributed to the Chacham. But who knows? Only God knows. Yeah, people, they do their best. We're talking about people over here who could do better, and they don't do better because they choose. It's not that important. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz was the mashgiach, the mir mashgiach in Europe before Rav Kalatsky Levenstein, Zeichet Tzaddik Livrocha, both of them. Rav Yerucham Levovitz was the ultimate mashgiach. He would speak to a person for a moment, and he already understood the person, what he was, what he needed. And the students who were great giants in Torah, they couldn't get over how immediately he was able to understand every aspect of their personality and their potential, and how he would pair up study partners for them, and he would have certain lectures he'd give to certain students, to others he would not, because he addressed exactly what they needed and what they had to hear, so they should develop. So there was a question, in Europe, people make a mistake. They think, the average community were observant Jews. They were not. At best, they were traditional Jews, because they were ignorant. They didn't know anything. So they would have, there were certain yeshivas, they would send out students, like the Chofetz Chaim did, that every Shabbos, he would send out one of his Talmidim to be the guest lecturer, the scholar of residence for that Shabbos. And he would speak about halacha, he would speak about whatever is musar, to bring them back on the path, to give them some understanding of what their responsibilities are. Rabbi Yerucham was opposed to it. Why? Because he said that over there he's sending out the student when he's still in his formative years, he's developing. He says, we keep him in the yeshiva and allow him to develop, to be that special Talmid Chacham, where he has the knowledge, and he has the maturity, and he has the ability. Then you send him out. The level of effectiveness will be multiples of what will be effective as a student going out. So it's not, conceptually, he's agreeing with what we're saying over here. The Talmid Chacham has a responsibility for his generation, that if you could make a difference, he has to make a difference. What about you'll make a greater difference if you wait till a little bit later? That was the disagreement with what Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz held, that not sending out the student when he was still the student, let him first finish his years and become that true Talmid Chacham, fully fleshed out in his ability, then you send him out to make the difference out there. But if he's within the ability to make the difference, he doesn't make the difference, then there's a level of liability. But who knows? Who knows? Only Hashem knows. I'm not going to record this. That's alluding to a person who has the ability to make a difference, Talmud Chochem, to influence others and chooses not to influence others. And the other people, as a result of that, they're held accountable and their lives are taken. And the reason is because this person could have made the difference, didn't make a difference. The Chofetz Chaim writes in one of his works, one of his svarim that he writes, he speaks about people who Talmidei Chachamim in communities, and their behavior is not appropriate in terms of who they are. For instance, he says that in shul they sit up front, so everybody they're in public view, and it comes and they're speaking before davening, and they start davening, and then there's Kaddish, and they continue speaking, and then there's Kriyas Torah, and they continue speaking. He says it's Chil Hashem. The Chofetz Chaim says he doesn't care what they're speaking about. Factually, being who they are supposed to be role models. And if they themselves don't value Kriyas Torah, don't value Kedusha, and don't value Kaddish, and they behave as they do behave, there's a very serious level of accountability for this. Chofetz Chaim makes these points. So you have to understand, what you represent. The Chofetz Chaim writes in Hilchos Tefillah that a person during Chazor Hashatz is supposed to listen to Chazor Hashatz. And therefore, if let's say during the repetition of Shemona Esrei, you want to look in the Sefer, and by looking in the Sefer, you're not going to be able to pay attention to Chazor Hashatz. It's a problem. What about if you're able to look in the Sefer and simultaneously listen with one ear and read whatever you're reading? He says, halacha, it's permitted. You're permitted to do this. However, he says you have a person who's a Talmud Chochem who goes and he learns during Chazor Hashatz. The other person who doesn't know any better, what does he think? Talmud Chochem is not paying attention to Chazor Hashatz. Therefore, that person will not pay attention to Chazor Hashatz. He says, better don't learn, because the takeaway is not going to be an appropriate takeaway. And therefore, you have to understand, because of what you represent, therefore, it creates a problem. You're a Talmud Chochem, and you don't listen to Chazor Hashatz, to someone else. He should listen to Chazor Hashatz. Therefore, you have to be careful. Therefore, better don't learn, even though you're able to listen to both simultaneously. I'm just saying, people have to have a certain degree of cognizance in terms of the behavior, because if they don't act as they should, the takeaway is a very bad takeaway. But here we're talking about something worse than that. You could have made a difference and you didn't make a difference. That person going off, there's a level of accountability for the person who could have made the difference. But it's not always the case. You have to give the benefit of the doubt. So that's the next posuk. It says, Lo solim nivlos alates. You shouldn't allow his carcass to remain displayed on that tree. So the Or Chaim HaKadosh says, Bol letzavos labot am shlo yaru acher chochem al der chomram. People, they could be murmurings about the Talmud Chochem. Maybe we're in this position because he's failing. So right away, you point the accusing finger at the Talmud Chochem. In Re'iza Talmud Chochem, Shekinu zehu madrega hayoser mu'ula shekol kinuyim eshet. Yeah. V'osa tzivo Hashem kisir eshor. Then it's the next pasuk. Kisir eshor achicha oseyo lidochim v'salam tovim. This we studied in Bava Metzia, in El Metzias. If you find the lost article of your fellow, a Jew, you must return it to the owner. And if you cannot able to locate the owner, you must take care of it. You must take it into your home and feed it, take care of it. And the Gemara tells us over there that if it's something which is a producer, like an ox, You could plow with it. So then it's the cost of his care will be covered by the proceeds that you'll make by hiring it out. But if it's an animal, there's no profits, and by the cost of upkeep will ultimately devalue the value of the lost article, you sell it, and you hold the proceeds, the value for the owner when you locate the owner. And we had the Gemara Mitzvah. So if you see the ox of your brother, Seyo, or sheep, the dochim, they go astray, and you turn the blind eye. You're not permitted to turn a blind eye, you must return it to your brother. If your brother, your fellow Jew, is not within your proximity, or you don't know who he is, you must bring it into your home, and it must remain with you until your brother seeks it out, and then you return it. Identity to his donkey, the Gemara in Bava Metzia goes and addresses every one of these words, why it's not superfluous. And you're not permitted to turn a blind eye. It's a negative commandment. Okay, so over here, the Or Chaim speaks about, we're not finished, on an illusionary level. He says, Lo sire eshor parshas ubo lirmos protes chiv hatochochos. Shetzichem nei kel chait tzadik olam lasos lav Hashem. People have to give musar. You have an obligation. You don't say, well, who am I to give musar? All of a sudden you play the humility card. Because of their spiritual dimension, they're called brothers. People have of one of a kind, spiritually speaking, they're called ochicho, brothers. If you see the ox, the holy flock. The Jewish people are called the holy flock. Who's Achicho? It's the flock or the herd of your brother. Hashem is called Achicho. The Yochis Lo Shem Zeh Lore Elmi Mikdosha Fu Mitzabe Shem Atzadikim. So Hashem is your brother. Who's Hashem's brother? The tzaddik is at that level, and Hashem is Achicho. And he commands you, and he tells you, Nidochim, you see your brother's ox or sheep go astray. That means you see a fellow Jew. The Jewish people are Hashem's flock. And you see your brother's sheep or ox go astray. We find She'oved Pirish Pi Hashem Nikra Didoch. A person who abandons the way of God, he's gone astray. God says, I want you to bring him back. Bring him back. It reiterates it. Hoshiv Chivim. First, you have to bring him back on track, and then you start influencing him. You must bring that ox or that sheep, who's the holy flock, back to your brother, to Hashem. What about your brother's not close? We're holding the last exile. It's going to happen, but it's been a while. This exile is over 2,000 years. We've been waiting for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Odlo v'lo yadato. We don't even know when it's going to happen. Shenastem shenistem aketz. The end of time is concealed from us. We don't know when it's going to be. Ben Yodua Mosai aketz haplos. We don't know when that wondrous moment is going to happen. V'zeh yisoviv harchokas halavovos me'amuna. Venite regel, and because of this extensive close that we have, many people have gone astray and have fallen to the wayside. Because people have given up hope. Kashenenu rose v'doras halolu. Im kol zeh tzav Hashem asafto tekli said. It doesn't make a difference. Even though the people have despaired and given up hope, it's your brother's. It's your brother's flock. You have to do whatever you can to bring them in. You should bring El Toch Beisecho. The Beis Medrash. The Beisecho is the Beis Medrash. V'lamdu orches chayim v'derech yishchonor. Yeah, teach them the ways of life, the protocols of life. I mean spirituality. So light should dwell there. Leval yater mnei orech, that it should not go astray. V'lo yimtzei oive b'machshavos v'tainus kozos. Should not be influenced with heretical beliefs. Ki'or Torah. Tatzilu, because only the light of Torah is going to save him. To see the light. Torah or, ner mitz Torah or. And you have to take care of them, be in that Beis Medrash until Hashem comes and calls us. It's literally like you brought him back from being lost. You returned the lost article by bringing him into your house. You're participating, bring back the lost article of the brother of God. Through the means of Torah and Musar, that is our so-called. This is our ability. Until Hashem takes the tzaddik, you have to be engaged in this till the last moment of your life. And if you don't, when are you going to return to Hashem when you die? If you did what you're supposed to when you were alive, you were involved in this outreach. You took care of the flock, Hashem's flock. But if you did not take care of Hashem's flock, or you could have taken care of Hashem's flock, then there's very serious accountability to that person. So he's going with the same thing. If you have an ability, you have to put yourself out there. You don't have an ability, then you don't. So people say to me, you have all these people learning a lake, they should be doing outreach. You understand? Not everybody's qualified to do outreach. Some people, they will do more damage trying to do outreach than doing outreach. Better study, become a big greater Talmud Chacham, be involved in your own community. Don't go out there to other community. Because you don't have the personality, you don't have the language, you don't have the understanding of what it's all about. But the person who does have it, he should.